Hello, I'm Mary Jo Faustgen. Today I bring you a new webinar called Family Feuds. And this probably won't be as entertaining as someone like Steve Harvey is with the game show, or in the old days it was Richard Dawson. But I'm hoping it'll be educational for you, and maybe it'll just confirm what you already know about families and how they don't get along at times. So above all, families are very complex, and they're very interesting to kind of analyze and get in and kind of think about what's going on with them. So we have a lot to talk about. Let's get started. The topics we're going to explore today: some of the characteristics of a family feud, and how does it start, some of the consequences, what makes it worse and what makes it better. So how can we possibly define a feud? Now, there's lots of different ways to look at it. We're going to look at lots of different pieces and parts of it. First of all, basically, it's prolonged bickering between two or more sides. So it's prolonged. It's not just a fight one time. It's over a period of time. Typically, it has more than one person on a side, but there might be times when there's only one person, and we'll have some illustrations about that. It may start with what's called coalitions or triangulations, and possibly a scapegoat. So let's look at those definitions. So a coalition, as defined by my original Systems of Family Therapy book when I was in grad school, a subsystem based on two or more people who join together either in support or in attack for one or more people, either in an open alliance or a hidden collusion. So it could be overt or it could be covert. So an example might be two parents who support each other in setting a boundary with someone, say a grandparent who has COVID-19, and they want them to isolate before they see their child. And we're going to illustrate that in just a minute. And I'll be showing you that a coalition may be either positive or negative and end up in either a positive interaction and relationship or a negative one. Triangulation has to do with three sides or three people. And it might be a parent who relies on the child for support when there's a marital problem, and illustrate that as well. And oftentimes there's a scapegoat somewhere or a victim, one or more people that's identified as the problem person, the identified patient, so to speak, in the group. There is oftentimes a lot of power plays in the family situation. So differences turn into this fight for power. So it might be a teenager who holds on to the cell phone that they have or that the parents have given them and don't want to surrender it for the night when the parents want him to. There can be all kinds of different examples. So let's see what we can see here in my illustrations. So I've illustrated here a positive coalition with a respectful boundaries. So these are the two parents who are trying to protect their child from, say, a COVID positive grandparent. And they're saying, please respect our child and us. And we ask that you isolate if you have COVID. We ask that you wear a mask when you come over. Please be respectful of what we would like. And hopefully the COVID positive grandparent will say, I respect that boundary. Thank you for sharing that with me. I will comply with that. However, it doesn't always happen, okay? So there can be a negative coalition with disrespectful assertiveness. So in this instance, maybe there's parent one and parent two who form this huge kind of overarching power play system, and they attack the person who has COVID. And they say, you know, don't you dare come over here when you have COVID. You were never vaccinated. You never wear a mask. You don't even believe that COVID is possible. And, you know, we do, and we want to protect our child. So the COVID positive person might get all defensive, or might attack back. So you've got this defense and attack going on, or maybe two attack systems going on. And all of that is always destructive. And how does that start a feud? Well, then you've got the aunts and the uncles trying to get in on it, and the other grandparent, and you've got other parents who are siding with the parents or siding with the grandparent, and you've got all these people, saying this is right and this is wrong. And I saw a lot of this during the pandemic at its height. A lot of families and or couples were coming in and saying, boy, we just got this problem in our family. We just don't know how to work it out. And so, this is how a family feud starts. This happened with the other pandemic too that happened in 1918, the flu pandemic. And so there were dissenters from vaccines, there were dissenters from masking, and they had a lot of the same issues. We didn't really hear about that too much or weren't very interested in that until we had our own pandemic. But much the same system happened back then. Another kind of negative coalition might be if you've got two adult children and they start ganging up on the parent. Maybe this parent had divorced from the other parent, and the children come at this parent and they say, this was a terrible childhood, a terrible decision that you made. You're a terrible parent. We're never going to forgive you. And, what's the parent going to do? Either going to attack back, get defensive, going to isolate from these children. It just sets up this, again, family feud when the aunts and the uncles and different people chime in with their viewpoints and what they think is right and wrong, and who's right and who's wrong, and who should have done what, and all that kind of stuff. So it gets pretty negative pretty fast. And then you add the coalitions and the triangulations together. So here we've got child 1 and 2 forming a coalition, and you've got two parents who are kind of having these issues with each other. They do not get along. And so child 1 and 2 are supportive to parent 1, and they form what is somewhat of a maybe a collusion with them. And there's a triangulation, but of course on this one side between parent 2 and child 1 and 2, it's pretty weak. But there is a triangulation because parent 2 is trying to have a relationship with child 1 and 2, and child 1 and 2 would prefer to support parent 1. And so it becomes very difficult. And then you may have another situation where child 1 and 2 are going to gravitate toward parent 1, who tends to be more permissive, and parent 1 disagrees with parent 2, who's more the disciplinarian. This person is kind of more stern, and this is the way you do it, my way or the highway. And so it's going to be hard for that parent to have a positive relationship with child 1 and 2 unless they kind of work on mellowing down a little bit. But this triangulation is going to be difficult in this family. And I see this a lot with parents who have different ways of parenting. And so you can have intra-family feuds where you've got the immediate family only. And then you also have inter-family, between families, where you can have the feuding. Maybe there's a school bully, and so there's the protective parents on one side from the child who's been bullied and maybe beat up, and you got the other people who are trying to protect their child because of course their child can't be the bully. So that kind of sets up a real difficult situation. Maybe there's other problems in the school. Maybe they're trying to set up some school security, and some people feel that there should be police on site. Some people feel it should be parents on site only and not the police. So you've got families against families. And then, of course, we've got the political realm. We've got the community who maybe is trying to cut down on crime or drugs, or some very activist type people in the community. And they aren't very popular because they don't necessarily want the riots in their community. So you've got these factions within the community. And then you can have child from family one against child from family two, because there's competition for class standing. They both want to be number one because they want to get into college. They want to be, at least in the top 10, and they're vying for grades and for the teachers to like them best. Could be lots of different things. And then you get the parents versus the in-laws. You get the aunts and the uncles and the cousins and everybody chiming in. And of course, friends too. You've got all kinds of people that, think they know what should be happening. So it gets to the point where, maybe we need a referee to figure all of this out. It gets so difficult, and it doesn't have to get difficult. Family dynamics just naturally create issues because you've got all kinds of different kinds of people within the family system. You've got the controllers and the power mongers. You've got, you've got the know-it-alls, and you've got people who tend to be brutally assertive. And you've got compliant people and people who want harmony in the family. There's people that want to debate and argue. There's people that don't want to debate and argue. There's people who are more successful, people who are not successful. And basically, if everybody's got their nose in everybody else's business, then you've got problems within the family. And then what happens when there's a fight over someone who has a last will and testament that doesn't seem to be quite fair? And, this brings up all kinds of issues. I don't know if you've been involved in one of these situations, but, it certainly brings up some really interesting family dynamics when someone dies and leaves a will, and it surprises the family members with who gets what. I know there's movies that are made of this, and there's for sure books that are done of it, and murder mysteries and all kinds of things. One of my favorite that I'm going to bring up to you is called The Testament by John Grisham. John Grisham is one of my favorite because Grisham happens to be my maiden name. And so I read a lot of his law-based novels. And this one is interesting because it has to do with the last will and testament. I'm going to read just the first paragraph of the inside cover. Troy Phelan is a self-made billionaire, one of the richest men in the United States. He is also eccentric, reclusive, confined to a wheelchair, and looking for a way to die. His heirs, to no one's surprise, especially Troy's, are circling like vultures. And sometimes it seems like people can circle like vultures. It creates a lot of problems, possibly within that feuding system. How does the feud start? Well, we've already talked about how it could start with the coalitions, the triangulations, the scapegoating, the power plays, all of that. But it gets down to more basic things because all of us have different thoughts, different conceptions, different misconceptions about things. We have different feelings, and sometimes we are very sensitive and we get hurt, we get angry, and oftentimes there's even different memories that we have. It could be the same children from the same family, the same event, and they have different memories, and that's been well documented in psychological circles. We often have different dreams, such as, why can't we all just get along? We have different expectations of maybe the family should help me get a job. Maybe the family needs to be there for me. And other people may not feel the same way. And so there can be lots of misunderstandings. There can be lots of hurt feelings and grudges. There's concerns as people don't get along. And then, we all have these mistaken beliefs that tend to cause problems in relationships, like things should be fair. Whoever said that life should be fair? Or I need the power in the family. I want to control. I'm right, you're wrong. Or that need to protect, need to defend someone, or need to get revenge. Okay? Feuding starts for so many different reasons. The consequences are many and difficult. People often feel alienated, resentful. Relationships suffer. Sometimes those relationships never get repaired. Sometimes relationships can get healed. Sometimes that requires that they come into family therapy. But many times there are lasting scars that never get healed because people sometimes don't forgive and they don't forget. What makes a feud worse? Certainly stubbornness and people refusing to change, people refusing to apologize. Maybe they've decided not to repair the relationship. Maybe they've decided not to let go of their hurt and they've decided not to forgive. What makes a feud better? Listening without judgment. Boy, is that hard. It's very hard, but very important. Can you listen to understand the other person? Maybe you could view my other webinar on communication. It can be very helpful to listen attentively without your intention of what you want to say. Keeping your cool. Very hard when you're very passionate about something. And again, I have another webinar about anger management. I'd highly suggest if that's really hard for you. Above all, what I've found that helps feuding is valuing the relationship over the other person's issues. Okay, so maybe they've snubbed you. Maybe they've had an attitude with you. Maybe they've been critical. But if you really want a better relationship, it's about letting that go and saying, I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on the fact that I want a better relationship. I really want that relationship. Forgiving and letting go of revenge is also very important. It takes humility to apologize, even if you did nothing wrong. Maybe you can just apologize for having, a disagreement. Maybe you can apologize for getting upset because maybe that created a trigger for the other person. And maybe if reconciliation is not possible, you need to set a boundary of time and space to protect yourself if you can't reconcile. And so we've explored a lot of topics, and I hope that something in here has been helpful for you, educational, and confirming and affirming for you if you've been either the victim of a family feud or you've had a family feud that you want to repair. It's always difficult. And I hope that as you go forward in life, that you can feel that reconciliation, that repair, that's very helpful. And please join me for more webinars. Please join me in hoping that all of you have a safe and healthy future. Thank you. Bye-bye now.